Big tackle from Ware right into the ribcage. Last thing Boom wants with a second to go. Holding the ball is the call. Well, that will do it. What a difference a couple of weeks makes. There's some belief building at the Blues all of a sudden. Life looks a little more rosy. A four-quarter effort, 2 wins in a row. They beat the Power.
Hello and good evening. Welcome to the CREEDCAST. This is your review of round 11. The first half of our season has been completed, and in a weird way, it's been bookended by 2 results that make us feel like shit. And we'll certainly get to a full spectrum mid-year review next week as we enter our bye period. But yes, we're recording here Tuesday, the 26th of May in the evenings. Of course, this will be released on the 27th of May. So welcome to all of you returning and new listeners alike. We appreciate you all. But yes, we're reviewing your Yardapori Footy Club, putting in together a result that looks like a team ready for the bye, a rebuilding team ready for the bye. 8-10, 58 to 13-14, 92. A game that's fairly forgettable. One that Jamie and I have been actively trying to forget whilst also preparing to do a review. It's a real interesting dynamic to deal with going into a review week. But good evening, Jamie. Welcome to bye week. Welcome to a review of a result that probably makes us feel as sad as North Melbourne did in round 1.
Absolutely. Hello to you and everyone else joining in. Yeah, a lot of morose people. And a lot of the interesting characters that come out of the woodwork in times like this, the opposite of sing when you're winning type stuff. But yeah, I'm still a bit flat. That may be for various reasons, as you know. But it was so disappointing, to be honest. You know. We'll touch on the various pros and cons of a game of Australian rules football at the elite level, which is the AFL. But yeah, by and large, going into a break with that sour taste in your mouth is it's quite hard to take.
It is, yeah. I think we, in the macro of it all, we can all kind of look at it and go, look, it's nothing too much changes out of the first half of the season. Again, we're going to record our first half of the season review probably this time-ish next week. That is to be determined, but of course we don't have a game this week, so we get a little bit of a break and then get to kind of look back on the first half of the season as a whole at that point. But we look back on it and still probably will be fairly positive about certain things we've seen. But we've definitely seen in the past few weeks kind of that maybe a young side going into the dog days of winter, starting to feel things in the legs. Teams of obviously the better teams or teams that have had a coaching change, as we've discovered on the weekend, change a few things up, have a little bit more data on what a young Port Adelaide side in the new era is doing, and they can figure things out and whether it's the legginess from a Gold Coast, not a Gold Coast visit, but a visit to play the Gold Coast up in Darwin. There's data out there about how teams will perform after those games as well. So there's a lot of different things, but they don't make any excuse for what we saw still. We certainly want to see better out of our side than what we saw. I wanted to start on one thing, and you kind of half brought it up, the people that come out of the woodwork, and I just want to start with a bit of defense. And I want to preface this with, opinions are like assholes. Everyone's got one, and everyone deserves to have an opinion about what is going on at the club, players they see, what they see. It's fine to have an opinion, but if you're going to have an opinion that is, to the general consensus bad, it will have a counter opinion come for it. And I think when we're a rebuilding side, and that much has been acknowledged by most, we're playing a lot of youth. And when you're playing youth in their first 10, 20, 30 games, there will be ups and downs, peaks and valleys. It is a roller coaster, and it certainly is partly due to the fact that the team isn't consistently performing either. So it's very, very hard for the younger players in the side to find their rhythm in those sides. But for if you're going to jump on the internet and say things like and declare, so there's a player out there, Joe Berry, who's played, I think it is, the number is 23 games now in his career. He's very, very young. He's in his age 20 season. If you're going to jump on the internet and declare a player that has played 23 games across 2 seasons, broken up by some stints as he develops his game, you're going to declare a 23-game player that is 20 years old and decide that you're going to declare them a bust, then I think your opinion is fucking shite. And I have no qualms, and I think you should feel terrible about yourself if you sit back and think about it. And I'm not going to name the person on Twitter that said this, but I'm sure a lot of people listening that are in the Twitter sphere will know. And it's not a personal attack on the person that put the opinion out there. Like I said, opinions are like arseholes. Everyone's got one. But if you're going to declare a player a bust and you're going to plant your flag in the ground and do all this fucking dog and pony show bullshit on social media just to make sure people know where you're at about a 20-year-old who only turned 20 last month, who's played 23 games, and his statistics are very, very similar to Robbie Gray and Zach Butters in their age 20 year. And that's not me putting pressure on this Joe Berry to play as well as those players have in their future careers. I'm just saying that objectively, the stats are very, very similar across the board to Zach fucking Butters and Robbie fucking Gray. If you're going to declare that 23-game player at 20 years old a bust, you, as a grown adult male on Twitter, need to fucking pull your head in. I hate this fandom, this modern fandom that you have to plant your flag in the ground about this shit. Just let a player develop. And I'm glad, having you and I talk to Joe Berry last week, that he kind of alluded to the fact he doesn't spend too much time on social media. So I don't want him to see that fucking bullshit. But if he does see that fucking bullshit, I want him to also know there's plenty of people out there and plenty of people that went back at this fella on Twitter to say that he might be full of shit. Sorry, Jamie, that's the end of my rant. I had to just let you know that I was done.
Yeah, I was just waiting for you to get passionate. Astute observations there. I definitely know who you're talking about. Yeah, where to go from there? Joe Berry. Yeah, it is real. We spoke about it earlier in the season in regards to treating players like a commodity and being a bit too AFL fantasy minded, super coach minded with real people. And you're right. We did chat to him at the club for their Talking Footy initiative, if you want to call it that. And there was also another thing that he said, and that was just being real about his first year in the system last year. The fact that, an 18-year-old uproots their whole life and moves into state and then is thrust into an elite sporting environment. It is a huge adjustment for a young person. And yeah, we can all sit in our couches, and you and I are SA born and bred from this point of view. And how good is Adelaide, and how good would playing football in Adelaide be? But it's not that simple for a lot of people. That was just an interesting insight into him, and he admitted that it took a bit of time to adjust, which you can totally understand. And then for me, it was quite interesting. Ollie Wines, the article came out about him, on the phone to his parents throughout his first year and not adjusting or not coping quite well, and look how that's turned out. But yeah, in terms of Joe Berry and this year specifically, and then just letting a young player develop, I obviously agree. The thing that I find most galling about this topic and the negative side of it, it's not based on any objectivity, and it's just purely based on some weird vibe. Like it's a vibe. It's Marbo. and it's just weird timing as well. I don't know, I can't think of too many other people that have expressed such a stubborn opinion. So I don't know if we're giving too much to this opinion. And I guess we feel the need to defend Joe Berry because of the drafting situation in which two Victorian clubs also passed up this player that Joe Berry's being compared to multiple times before we even had our first pick. And of course, Freo also attempting to draft Joe Berry, but we can have those conversations till the cows come home and until the careers of these players have kind of sizzled on the pan for a bit longer. Yeah, so again, I don't know if we're giving too much attention to a very out of the box opinion, but I said to you that it is really sing when you're winning type energy, because one of the easiest things that you can do as a footy punter or a pundit, a fan, whatever category you fit into, if for your love of football and particularly AFL football, the easiest thing you can do is write someone off or write a team off because the odds are in your favor. But to be so outward about it in that direction, and then to just kind of go, well, if he proves me wrong, I'll cop it and I'll admit it. And as an adult, I kind of feel like you should do that anyway. Like that shouldn't have to be a noteworthy submission to your case. But also, being hypercritical of a kid, and then if and when he turns it around, you're going to appreciate it then. Like that. That's just jump. That's bandwagonism in my opinion. It's like
it is.
pot a team or a player depending on who you're going at when they're down, and Joe Berry's not down. I'll just put that in there. The vast majority of Port Adelaide supporters would say he's had a pretty good month. Particularly as I'm looking at the screen now, he was our 6th rated player on the field on Saturday. But then, to jump on when they are doing well is bandwagonism. So I find that galling as well. I just think it's a bit of a cop-out to... is it certain people's thirst for contrarianism as well? Like I just don't understand. It was just a weird thing. It was just a weird thing to pop up, particularly at this time, and particularly when we're judging small forwards after a loss of that magnitude on the weekend and with that such shitty supply. I hadn't delved into the stats when this topic of conversation was coming up on social media. And I had, quite a busy weekend. And then we were contacting each other, and it was moments before that I'd actually looked at the statistics, and I said to you, like, I expected them to be fucking terrible. But considering that he is a small forward in a game where our transition from defense to offense was fucking insipid, and we lose by such a margin, I'm thinking he's done a pretty good job considering the circumstances. So to not give that opinion any more weight, but to further reiterate that personally, I'm happy with Joe Berry's progression. And I look forward to the ups and the downs. That's part of supportership, in my opinion. As it's kind of our ethos is being constructively critical when necessary, but at the end of the day, you still have to support the people who wear the Guernsey of the club that you love.
Mhm.
You should always want the best for those people, whether they're a player, whether they're a coach, whether they're an administrator. Again, be critical when necessary, constructively, and don't be a fucking wanker about it. But have their back like that. And again, we've had a similar conversation. Like, I feel like that aspect of supportership is being sucked out of the league a little bit with the player movement and the oversaturation of AFL media and the hyper involvement, for want of a better word, in fantasy leagues and Supercoach. And I don't know if fantasy leagues are super popular worldwide. I personally don't enter myself into those domains, nor do I have the time to if I wanted to.
Might move for your mental health.
But it all goes into the melting pot.
I don't play fantasy AFL.
Yeah,
basketball and football and American football, and it hurts me every.
But this is the thing. Like, it's a very popular. I'm not shitting on fantasy football or fantasy sport as a hobby or whatnot. It's just that I feel that the ideology of that domain and real life is kind of bleeding into one another in a way, which I don't like. Again, treating players like they're a figure on your screen, and you can just shift them around or boot them.
What value are you getting?
Exactly.
In that position?
Exactly. Yeah. And the hyper negativity of the AFL media and the player movement space where it's being discussed ad nauseum, I think all feeds in together, and it's created quite a negative and contrarian type environment that goes against just basic clubmanship and supportership that I kind of live for, both in my personal life, in local sport, but also when it comes to the Port Adelaide Football Club in the realm of Australian rules football at the highest level.
Yeah. No, you've brought up a lot of very good points as to why I brought it up in the first place. I know it's starting the episode in a weird area, but I just feel like on the back of a result like that, there's a lot of negativity that comes around. Shout out to, I think, Ashley Hall on Twitter, on YouTube, who regularly comments and I assume just intakes the podcast on YouTube. So thank you for listening as always. He put a comment up on one of the last episodes just talking about how he appreciates what we do in just being supporting of the club and the players and the team. And again, I think a good point, and so I appreciate that comment. It actually meant a lot to me to read, and I did respond and say that.
Appreciate you, Ashley. You've been around for a while now.
Absolutely, yeah. And so I wanted to reiterate my appreciation for that, and appreciation for all the support we get. But the reason that meant so much to me is that the acknowledgement of, kind of, we try to. It's very easy to jump on a podcast and record, but it's also very difficult to kind of try and find the balance of tone and content and what we do, in also trying to honestly review what the Port Adelaide Football Club is doing. And so your point about constructive criticism is the key as to why I get so annoyed at these people that people that put these comments up, and particularly just declaring Joe Berry a bust really, really irked me, and it's pissed me off for a few days now. And I shouldn't let that get to me, but it is such dumb fandom to just use that verbiage about a player that's 20 and is actually showing promising signs, and to most people is showing a lot of promise. But imagine if Joe Berry did just go up and after the game just see that. And we talk about players' mental health, and for a player, they're trained to not let this stuff impact them. So I'm sure it wouldn't impact them that much. But again, there is a lot of talk out there in the wider sphere. It's maybe bubbled it under a little bit because Berry's been going okay. Obviously, the other player we know that got drafted by Freo is going very, very well. There's a lot of teams that missed out on him if you want to go down that path. I think you were alluding to that as well. But I think for us,
who had multiple picks as well before Port had their first pick.
Oh, exactly. There's a few teams that could have taken him a couple of times and still got the player they wanted as well at first. So. Yeah, no, and I'm very, very comfortable with what Joe Berry can potentially provide in future years as well. I feel like it's just going to go down the path of the Sam Walsh, Connor Rozee comparison in future years. It'll just disappear because the wider footy world will realise both teams got a decent player. And comparison to a line that you've brought up before, comparison is the thief of joy. But yeah, I want to see, like, if you're going to say Joe Barry's a bust, tell me why. And if you're going to go on Twitter and say it and just say, I'll apologize when I'm wrong, and that's the best you can do, then you're just a fucking idiot. And that's all I'm going to, that's all I'll finish off. I have no qualms of saying it. You might be a good person I can sit down with the pub and have a beer with and a decent chat with. But if you're going to say things like that on Twitter as a grown man and about a player and back yourself up on it with the fallback that if I'm wrong, I'll apologize. But if I'm, Joe Barry might just end up injured, for the rest of his career. But that won't take away from the fact he's a promising prospect right now. He is. That is actually statistically correct. So I did say on Twitter that you're already wrong. And if his career continues apace and he has good injury luck, then he's going to be fine and you will be wrong. You're already wrong now. But if he gets injured and does 2 ACLs and things, knock on wood, that doesn't happen. But you're still wrong because what we're seeing now is actually objectively better than what you're seeing as well. So it's bad. I encourage people to watch the game better because there's comparisons being made to players like Josh Lai and Jack Whitlock in that same conversation. It's also, well, those guys just at either ends of the field, their main task is to take marks and either distribute the ball forward or kick a goal. Joe Barry's role is very, very different. There's a very thankless role in the side. A young player in his position coming in is playing a thankless role, high half forward, and that's why Zach Butters and Robbie Gray were averaging 13, 14 disposals in the first couple of years, and that's why Joe Barry, in his second year at his age 20 year, is averaging 14 disposals, going at 72% disposal efficiency, having 5 or so contested possessions, all very much similar to Zach Butters and Robbie Gray in their age 20 years as well. So putting a final stamp on that, the lines are very similar. It doesn't mean that he's going to be the same player, but it means that at what we're tasking him to do, he's getting very, very similar results, again, to Zach Butters and Robbie Gray. And just quietly, they're pretty fucking good.
I have nothing more to add. Yeah, I'm just...
I've been angry about that for a couple of days. I've fucking been angry. And it's because I love players. I will criticize players if they do the wrong thing, whether it be outside of football or whatever. I'll absolutely come in and give players the deserved criticism for anything they do wrong. But if you're just making dumb comments on social media, then I'm going to defend a player that they're actually just objectively easily proven wrong. Then I will defend the player. We'll be constructively critical always.
And that's while you were talking, I was just looking at I was just looking at the stats from Saturday again, and going, how can anyone who's watching the game and understands positions on the field, think that was the time to pull the trigger on that comment? But anyway, I wasn't as fired up about it. I was just flabbergasted that you can come out of this last month of Joe Barry and come to that conclusion that he's a bust. But feeding the negativity there, it's ridiculous.
But hopefully providing some positivity for those listening, that we can actually give you the kind of objective truth that Joe Barry's been going okay. And we are a side that is rebuilding, and we're going to have, these interesting games where, Barry slips a couple of times. That is true, but he's not alone. And then overall, we have a pretty shit game as a side. So you shouldn't be beating down on the 23 game, player as a reason for that, because there's a lot of players that, played below par in this game. And that's the time to get into it.
Well, hang on. Just as an end to that, maybe it's an open question. What or who is not a bust? Like after in their when a 19 or 20-year-old, know, what is an example? And who comes to mind? Like, I'm pretty sure there's a small minority of 19 or 20-year-olds that if they're, that aren't a bust in that thought process, and there would be a high majority. If you're going Joe Barry's a bust, then you're going, a lot of players are a bust if that's your measuring stick. I hope you understand what I'm saying. Like, if that's your measuring stick of a bust, what Joe Barry's done, particularly over the last 4 to 6 weeks, in, like you said, a team that's struggling to win games of football, there's a lot of players in the AFL system who have been a bust, and surprisingly have gone on to be All Australians and win medals of various degrees and carved out pretty successful careers after, statistically being a bust at 20 years old. Like you're saying with the Robbie Gray and Zach Butters comparisons, like there's only a small group of people who get drafted and immediately hit the ground running and put up, like, all Australian squad like numbers and stuff, like, your Nick Dacos's, for example. Mm-hmm. And yes, Murphy Reid is doing fantastically fucking well in a team that had just won 10 games straight. So there's only, like, you're expecting a lot of young people to put up high numbers at such an early point in their career, or to be some sort of savior for you. That's probably where I'll finish.
Robbie Gray didn't average beyond 20 disposals in a season until 2014, which was 7 years after he got drafted. So Joe Barry going at 14 or so with similar contested possessions is doing very, very well right now, and I'm very, very happy to have Joe Barry wearing the number 5 playing for the Port Adelaide Football Club, and I'll leave it at that on him. Although I'm sure he could come up as any other point, but the game. Not many people disposed of it well in this game, which, by the way, Joe Barry went at 86%, so maybe he disposed of it better than most. But let's talk about the game, Jamie.
I noticed that.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Isn't it funny how stats don't lie? This was a really, really disappointing game for a variety of reasons, but we fall back to, and I kind of touched on at the start, that it bookends the first half of the season really curiously well, because we have a game with a disposal discrepancy that we hadn't seen more or less probably since the North Melbourne game. I know Gold Coast we started seeing a little bit in the last couple of weeks. There's been a trend in play. But just as a starting point, this was a game that just saw a team both be harder at the ball, control the ball better, handle the ball better, and ultimately be able to win the game. And let's start with a couple of key stats before I throw to you. 404 disposals to 325. Disposal efficiency. So that obviously that number is in favour of Carlton, if my tone wasn't intonating that. But so we're looking at 79 more disposals, whilst they went at 76.2 disposal efficiency versus our 72.6% disposal efficiency. So again, that number extrapolates out even further if you consider the amount of disposals utilised. And then it was just marks around the ground, 108 to 88. We've dropped down our mark numbers. Obviously, last week was horrible, but even this week, Carlton averaging 93.7 for the season, but have 108. We average 102. Have 88 in the game. So they go, 15 above their average. We go 14 below. So you look at that as a real difference of 30, 30 or whatever you want to do, however way you want to read the stats. There's a lot of areas that we've fallen away from in the last couple of weeks, because these are similar things we saw in previous weeks. There are some areas that don't look as bad. Contested possession, right in line. Centre clearances, 11-11, though that discrepancy was a little bit larger earlier in the game when the game was probably won by Carlton, so that has to be mentioned as well. I think centre clearances at one point was 8-5 in favour of Carlton in the second quarter, so they kind of, when they put the ultimate winning scoreline on the board, it was in their favour. We actually won stoppage fairly handily, and ultimately that helped us win the clearance battle in total by plus 8, 35-27 in clearances, 24-16 in stoppage. A key area, though, obviously the marks and the possessions are big, and then when you have less of the ball and the disposal efficiency is less, and then you turn the ball over 72 times to their 62, a minus 10 differential in turnover when our average on the season was only minus 2. So you're turning the ball over far more and in dangerous positions, and they actually capitalized on it quite well.
They did, yeah, and that capitalized on it. Oh my gosh, it's giving me Vietnam flashbacks. Standing on the hill, just watching it unfold in front of me. I mean, we talk about player stats not lying, and I mean the team stats are interesting because you look at a few of these and you go, "Oh, that's not half bad." But we all saw what we saw, and it looked like we were playing in lead boots. You mentioned marks before, and I noticed that marks inside 50 were 16 to 18, which again, on paper, that's like, that's kind of good. We were competitive. But I think the major difference was, I think we were taking all of our marks between 35 meters out and 50 meters out, or 55, whereas a lot of their marks were within 35 meters. And then as an extension of that, it's no surprise why they went, 8 straight goals. And we were at, I think we were at 3-4 at one stage, or 3-5. I think one time I looked up at the scoreboard in that first half, they had 10 scoring shots and we had 7, but they'd kicked 8 goals 2 and we'd kicked 3 goals 4 or something like that. And the reason for that was low percentage shots on goal versus Carlton's high percentage shot on goals. They were getting way too easy looks. And I listened to Luke Webster's press conference, I watched it on YouTube. And basically, it was a kind of like, what did you discuss? What went wrong kind of thing. And it was just like every line broke down. It was defense to offense transition, but then it was offense to defense, team defense, word salad there. And then it was contests in the middle or broken tackles. Funnily enough, we won the tackle count, as you would expect when you're not getting your hands on the pill as much as your opposition. But I can vividly see broken tackles from the game again, right in front of me. So it was just like, okay, nothing worked. Cool. Great. Yeah. And again, to bookend the season, this is exactly how we felt after round 1. Nothing worked. Every line was deficient. And they look cooked. There's no escaping that we looked off the pace, hardcore. And it probably fed into the reason why there were so many broken tackles, was because we looked shot early on in the game. And it was only thanks to some inaccuracy from Carlton's behalf in the second half, and then, a bit of Q in the rack type stuff in the last quarter, I've heard. We did show a bit of something in the third and fourth quarters, maybe the end of the third, start of the fourth, but too little too late. And then it was a flash in the pan, sliding doors moment with JHF dropping that mark in the fourth quarter, which I kind of brought up to you several times. Once the tide quickly shifted back in Carlton's favour, the field tipped in their favour, as you would say. But it's just such. And I guess the harshest thing is now we have to wait for some sort of redemption. It's like, how can you win hit out and then clearance, but just play in that manner? And it was just totally. It was insipid. It was an insipid effort, just allowing them to just create training drill like handball chains to waltz the ball from our forward 50 right up to their forward 50 and get really good fucking looks at it. hurrah, hurrah, we haven't conceded 100 points again. And in some weird way, we're still rated pretty well from a defensive point of view. But oh my gosh, like it was witches hats type stuff at stages there throughout the game, and it left me shaking my head for a lot of it. You probably saw me. I was just staring into the mire, shaking my head, because obviously it's been a pretty tough year thus far for me. There's no secret about that, and I was really looking forward to this game, and hoping for a dopamine hit. We'd come out of a 5-week stretch where no one expected a lot at the start of it. Showed a lot of promise while only going 1-4 win-loss. And that one win was phenomenal and clearly kind of looks out of the box for whatever reason, but it happened.
Yeah.
And then, to get that served up, and I don't really want to, the Darwin factor. It's an interesting anomaly in the game, and no one will be using that as an excuse outside of the four walls, and I don't really want to entertain it either. Because we'll never know. There's no point wasting energy on it, and there's no tangible that you can go off of. They look cooked. Gold Coast gave up a 7-goal lead to lose their game in the end as well. So,
which is probably
you got to put in a better effort than that.
We're at, considering where we're at versus them.
Yeah. But the thing is, but then you do look at the stats and you go, you've won clearance, and you've matched them in center clearance. Like you said, it was kind of made up more as the game wore on.
But we also won the first 5 minutes of the game too. Like that's a point to touch on too. Is like
that is a good point.
We, I think the first 3 to 4 minutes we had 4-0 inside 50, 6-2 clearance as a total clearance number. Basically, we kind of started the game well, and obviously Horn Francis kicks the opener. Like I said, winning clearance 6-2, 4 inside 50s to none, and then we just start. That's when the turnover started. The turning over the pill, and basically a lot of Carlton's first 5 or 6 goals come from somewhat egregious turnovers and just bad ball use and a little bit and just undercooking,
which also hasn't been a scoring source for them thus far in the season. I think we chatted about that in the preview, is that they score most of their goals or most of their score from stoppage throughout the first half of this season. And then, like you said, to watch egregious turnovers turn to simple goals, simple chains of possession.
Yeah. Whereas they actually had, like, if you look at score source, they kicked 6 goals, 3 from stoppage, but they kicked 6 goals, 11 from turnover, which we actually win the turnover score battle with 7 goals, 6, but we also only kicked 1 goal, 2 from stoppage. So, like, they are able to kind of, they score well from multiple areas. I mean, score origin, if you look at, I find this one interesting one. Like, they kicked 6 goals, 7 from their defensive half versus our 2 goals, 6. Their forward half goals is a little bit down on ours. We kicked 6 goals, 2 to their 4 goals, 7 from forward half. And then centre bounce score, they kicked 3 goals to our 2 points. I think what's interesting there is it shows that when we get the ball in our forward half, obviously we find a way to score, but we don't do that well enough. And then our transition game has really fallen apart in the last 3 to 4 weeks. It's been diminishing returns and really horrible the last couple of weeks. Whereas you kind of said it, when they went to transition the ball from defensive half to forward half, it was witches' hats. So they were able to kind of, their score source and score origin was actually quite well spread throughout the game. Basically whatever way the game was being played, they were able to find a way to score. Whereas we really had to get a little bit of period of forward half dominance to find a score. And that was basically where most of our score come from. Defensive half score wasn't a great source for us. We do kick 2 goals, 6, but again, a lot of that defensive half score, the reason it's 2 goals, 6 is because it's shit balls coming inside 50, they're coming into, that 35 to 55 range that you were talking about, and you're just not getting quality shots on goal from, even if we do get forward from our defensive half, they're half chances at best. There was a couple of moments of good transition, but then it got broken up by like an errant handball and some stuff like that. And it just didn't come off well. And whereas Carlton were able to, they found different avenues to score depending on how the game was being played. But ultimately, it was just far too easy to get through us.
It was, yeah. And it's made even more deflating when, you do get your hands back on it and there's a promising couple of possessions or disposals ultimately undone by an errant kick or a hack kick that just inevitably got intercepted. And let's be honest, like, apart from their rebounding halfbackers, like, we weren't playing an all-Australian standard defensive line on Carlton's end, which was a line that we thought we would take advantage of if we win clearance and if we get some dominance in the middle. But it just did not come to fruition.
Straight to Harry Dean all the fucking time.
Straight to Harry Dean, yeah.
Harry Mackay took more fucking marks inside 50 than half of our forwards did, I think. Like in our 50,
yeah. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I mean, it's just that, and I mentioned in the preview that they have enough players to make the game annoying for us if they all come to play. And look, I had the belief that while Voss was still coach, their age profile and the core of their group should have seen them in a much better position than what they ended up and what eventually ended up causing the demise of Michael Voss. And yeah, they've all decided to come to play now that he's out of the fucking picture. Such as, your Hewitts, your Florence, Will Hayward, on top of their bona fide star and established stars like Cripps and Walsh. Jagger Smith obviously showing a lot of promise as a young player. He's pick good. 3, though, not a pick 13. I
did enjoy it, like, just as an AFL fan, I was like, it's first time me seeing Jagger Smith in person, and I won that just, as a footy fan, I was like, yeah, he's good. Put a bit more.
There was a certain there was a certain centre clearance where they were kicking to the northern end, and he won it, and he steamed out of the centre, like the CBA, and he kicked it like a bullet, and it was kind of in the direction of where we were standing, and he hit someone on the fucking chest, and they had a shot on goal. That was a moment for me where I was like, yeah, okay. I'll buy that for $1.
I mean, let's start with the defensive line just as we get to the line, because I know we've gone a little bit longer on both rants against dumb fandom and just starting with stats. I think it was important to start in a few stats, though, just to kind of give a shape to the game as to what we kind of saw, and that's why I kind of like to start with a few of those stats. But and more stats, feel free to bring them up as we go. But the defensive line, it was an interesting one. I think I watched the replay back today. On the night, I just thought, geez, Aliir and Radigalia had average nights. I still don't think they had great nights, but I actually just think it's partly just some fucking incredible forward 50 entry for a half from Carlton. There's a little bit of they just had a half out of the box. And it was noted in the stats that at one point, Carlton's use by foot in the second quarter was 83% versus Port at 36%, which is just fucking horrific. But at halftime, their goals per inside 50 was 43%, which is just well above season average, versus Port at 14%, despite at halftime actually being 21 inside 50s apiece. So both teams had the same amount of inside 50s. Carlton were converting almost half of their inside 50s versus ours at 14%. Kick inside 50 retention rating for Carlton, they were 50 52% going into the game, which was third in the comp. So they've actually, which goes to show Carlton, some of their results have been really weird earlier in the season. They've just fucked up a half here and there. And obviously we've seen the memes. I don't need to go into that, but they've actually were third in the comp for kicks inside 50 retention going into the game. At halftime, they're at 65%. So 52% going into the game was the third best in the comp, and they were at 65% kick retention inside 50 rating at halftime. I think we could have been better at. Like,
I felt that.
Again.
I felt that in real time. Yeah. Jesus.
I mean, shout out to our mate Steve, one of the original listeners who joined me and you on the hill on the night. I mean, he and I just got into a conversation about British politics and Keir Starmer on the night at halftime. That's all we had. I didn't want to talk about the game, so now we are.
What's to talk about?
There's that half. I mean, I think there's a chat to be had about the defensive structure and how it's missing. Obviously, some of the better performances we've had in the past few weeks have seen Lockie Jones play well. I've seen Miles Bergman play well once he got settled a bit more down back. There has been a bit of a shake-up in the defense, and obviously Todd Marshall was down there for a while and had some decent games maybe 6 weeks ago now that we look back on it. But then this is a team. Aaliyah has seen a rotating crew of defensive partners, and I think they didn't have a great game, but I think watching it back, and I'd be interested to see your view, I think a part of it is just Carlton played really well. We're a little bit flat-footed in midfield, even though the clearance statistics weren't crazily disparate, but they just entered 50 really, really well. And when a team is just on like that, you need to be on. And because we're flat-footed, a little bit flat, a little bit lethargic, whether it's Darwin stuff, whatever it may be, there's just like this perfect combination of them being on, new coach boost, whatever it may be, and they just had a first half out of the box that led them to a scoreline that unfortunately was something we could not match up with.
Yeah, that was it. It was all she wrote at halftime, wasn't it? When you look at the final score, I mean, again, I felt that in real time. When a team's kicking 5, 6, 7, 8 goals straight, it's a pretty good indicator of where the game's going to go. Unless you, of course, are doing the same in kind, and we weren't past our first couple of goals. But it's interesting. I think you brought up, it was probably in the review last week, but maybe the preview for this game, just the separation of judging defenders on their defense and then judging them on how they start offense, which I think is important. And while, like you said, thinking that Aaliyah and Radaglia had average nights, in real time, I was at my wits end lambasting the midfield and just kind of audibly frustrated at the fact that our defense was getting sold out. And it's not something that's new to this show.
Say that out loud audibly. I can vouch
I was
to the listener
fucking pissed off. Yeah.
And like I'm absolutely with you on that, by the way.
Yeah, 100%. You're like, you can only do so much as a defender when the structure's off kilter, but when it's off kilter to the extent that it was, like you're a sitting duck. And then, when your opposition does get a head full of steam and they start to pull off some things that, maybe we weren't prepared for, or maybe it's just they're kissed on the dick for a half. Again, it may be multiple things, but when you're midfield and to an extent your forward line, if it's up there, that is, are letting your opposition traipse through you like a knife through butter, there's only so much you can do from a defensive point of view. So that's that. And I absolutely, like, yeah, I come out of the game and I go, defensively, you probably did all you can do. I'm looking at stats from, Jace Burgoyne and Logan Evans, and then even Radagalier had 2 contested marks, Josh Lai, who I'm sure you want to get to, and may feature later on in the episode. I thought they did as well as they possibly could. They could obviously do better from a defensive point of view, but considering the ease in which Carlton were able to move the ball from the other 2/3 of the ground, I thought, I'm not overly critical of how they defended. Now, when it comes to offense, that's where it became way too predictable, and we looked. Maybe it's a case of mental exhaustion from having to defend so much. To give them an out, they're professional footballers at the end of the day, and we need to create chains of possession. And they don't even necessarily have to end up as scores. I'm not sure of the statistics on it. Particularly kick-ins to score is pretty low. Defensive chain scores, I think they're in vogue if you can get your game moving, and obviously speed of ball movement, handball chains are in vogue for some of the top sides like Sydney, for example. But yeah, even if it's to get it into a stoppage situation in our forward third, or ease some pressure. But I thought that, unfortunately, we came a bit too predictable, and Carlton played a part in that as well. They've taken a leaf out of Bulldogs' book, Adelaide's book. Again, watching the Gold Coast game from home, it was hard to see how they were structuring up. I can only imagine that they were congesting there was actually quite a few times now that I think about it where they're just congesting our defensive half, and making us kick up in the air, kind of just as high as we are kicking it far, and the penetration is there as well. Joe Richards was on SEN in his weekly spot, and he mentioned something interesting in that, in their review, they noticed that we weren't making the ground wide. Carlton were obviously defending wide. They were, like I said, congesting up, but also spread wide, which, again, when you're looking at it from more of ground level, why these guys are getting paid the big bucks. You're having to make split-second decisions with 30 players right in front of you, and it's like you're standing on a foosball table and there's just people staggered, and you're like, wow. But he also mentioned that the attitude or the viewpoint was almost like we were defending ourselves with congesting the field ourselves and limiting our options in terms of our offense from the defensive line, which I thought was an interesting take, and maybe put that down to some immaturity across each line, shell shock maybe, but it's obviously something that drastically needs improvement, because I dare say a lot of the sides that we're going to come up against now are going to accept the fact that we may be good defensively from a statistical point of view, but our offense leaves a lot to be desired. And it's been shown over the last month that if you stifle the area in which we want to get to, particularly the corridor from that centre half back area, we kind of don't have many answers. And that was too evident on Saturday night.
Yeah. I think whether this is a fever dream or I actually remember it, I swear you were just shouting spread at some point on Saturday night. So,
because they were flat-footed. We'd get the ball, and there was just so many fucking people in close proximity to the ball. It was, again, agonizing to watch.
And then we saw Carlton do it quite well, going the other way. So it was just like the space is always there. And to your point about defensive 50 to forward 50 percentage, we only, 10%, 10.8% going from defensive 50 to forward 50, while Carlton went at 33.3%. So that is a huge discrepancy. Basically, if they can transition every third possession from defensive 50 to forward 50 versus us only doing 1 in 10. Like that's the game right there. And that's why the clearance numbers start to matter, because when you go center clearance and you go even there, but then they can transition down forward. But that's where a fucking 5 to 6 goal margin comes from. Because if you're winning it at a stoppage in your defensive half all the time and you can't fucking transition it, then what the fuck's the point? Like, that's kind of where that's why I like bringing up all of the. That's why. And dear listener, thank you for tuning in as always. That's why sometimes I throw all these stats at you, but I'm trying to build the story of the game. In certain ways, because you look at these different stats and you go, okay, you win, you're even at center clearance, okay, that's fine. But then if you're winning it at stoppage, but in half the stoppages are coming out, and time in forward half was actually to a certain point in Port's favor, but like again, it's the ability to transition from defensive half to forward half. Time in forward half doesn't matter if Carlton can transition every third possession very easily down to their forward half and get a scoring opportunity. That doesn't translate to time in forward half, but it does translate to a very, very good goal scoring opportunity. And that's why they had more marks inside 50 ultimately, even though, our time in forward half number was okay. We even up at center clearance. And again, that comes down to that offensive ability of the back half. And that's why we tried Todd Marshall down there back earlier in the year. And obviously we'll get to the forward line in a moment, but why, as much as we love Aliir, and as much as you and I on the podcast love Asava Radagalier, I know the jury's still out on social media, and that's a discussion for another day maybe. But and we're enjoying the roles of your Logan Evans and your Jace Burgoynes at times down there. But because there's a little bit of shake-up so much with Bergman going out, Jones going out, Josh Lai was very good. And let's touch on Josh Lai for a moment. It's a very limited role that he's being tasked with at the moment. But okay. Positivity for a moment. Josh Lai, I did put up a social media post about his stats, and I think he's a player that we've found a little diamond in the rough, so to speak, and what his ceiling is, I'm still a little bit unsure of, because a lot of people are going, this is the guy you need to focus on, but his role is still very limited. He's not being tasked with, like Aliir and Asava being tasked with much tougher roles. Like they're obviously going onto the main forwards and being tasked with the toughest roles every game, week in, week out. Aliir obviously with the toughest roles, and then it goes transition pecking order, so to speak. But some of the contested marking, obviously Josh Lai was number one in contested marking. I think equal second in this intercept. So number one contested marker on the ground, that's both teams. Equal second in intercepts, that's for both teams as well. So there's a couple of statistical markers that he topped, or was top two on the ground in those defensive metrics that for both teams. So I think he deserves his flowers. He's still, like I said, we've got to see what he does when he takes the next step and gets given more and more time, because I think it was like 68% time on ground as well. So there's he's not being tasked with the time on ground numbers that Aliir we obviously talk about a lot, often 100%. Asava is often at 95 to 100% as well when he's fit. So these guys that are often getting some shit from fans are actually being tasked with a lot more than a Josh Lai is being tasked with. But what he got tasked with, I think he did very well. He's a very, very good find. We've obviously talked about his origin story already, but he was one of the better performers on the night. Again, the going the other way stuff is where maybe it needs to be figured out. But some flowers to Josh Lai coming back from concussion as well, for doing some good things on the night. They probably provide us a few of the highlights that we had on the night.
Yeah, absolutely. While you were chatting, I was just thinking that on a night as frustrating as it was a breath of fresh air every time the ball kind of was in his vicinity, because 4 contested marks were just like, oh, thank fuck. And, thank fuck they don't have another shot on goal at one point there, but also, acknowledging who he is, where he's come from, how old he is, and all of those things as well. Just it all comes into it. And in terms of his disposal, like I think he tries to keep it simple, and whether that's a directive from the coaches or not. But I still like the fact he does still try and bite off some changes of angles, for example. And I think his disposal is generally pretty good. He's a young
power is
up-and-coming
good.
player. Yeah, he has that balance of long and short options. Sometimes, a bit too much hang time on the kick and whatnot, but I don't mind it. But what a highlight, out in a night that was agonising by and large, whether it be an intercept in the air or just a genuine one-on-one contest. I loved it. It was clearly noteworthy. It had many people chatting, in our vicinity, that's for sure. And again, I think appreciating the fact that when it was in his area, the ball ended up in his hands, and we weren't having to hope for another miss or a behind on Carlton's behalf.
Yeah. There's some trust in when the ball goes into his area that he's going to be able to do something, which is already a really, really nice thing to have, considering he's, obviously only debuted a few rounds into this season. So it's a nice thing to have, considering, again, we're a rebuilding side and we're looking for these signs in these young players. But again, the roles are different, whether you're comparing Josh Lai or Joe Berry or Jack Whitlock. I guess we can transition to the forward line. I feel like the midfield might be an intriguing place to finish on when we're talking about the line. So let's talk about the forward line. How much there is to talk about here, I'm not 100% sure, but interesting place for our forward line in the last few weeks. Obviously, Mitch Georgiades is finding far less opportunity in the past few weeks. Still gets his goal. Him and Durden continue their goal in every game run that they're having this year. Shout out to Durden for, I'm sure we'll talk about that in a moment, for his goal, because there's so much to talk about in that moment. But, Georgiades, he almost had a nice general play goal that just out of some stop. I can't remember if stoppage or just general play, but it hits the post. Very kind of unlucky. Maybe could have dished off handball as well, but he ultimately just kicks the one goal, which was set up by a very good and unselfish Todd Marshall assist. He also absolutely blasts one out on the full from a opportunity that had the commentators in ruined Ken Hinkley and co. saying this is the Mitch Georgiades zone. And instead, it reminded me of playing FIFA 05 when I miss a goal so badly. And I think Ali McCoist in the FIFA 05 commentary would say something like, if there's a goal next to the goal, he wouldn't have scored. Which was Mitch Georgiades taking that set shot. So I think I turned to you on the night and said, I think this is Mitch Georgiades officially now having a case of the yips. And I think that's kind of like it's diminishing returns as far as shots on goal in the past few weeks, but he's missing some more badly. And that was that one that he missed out in the full. And it could have been out in the full twice was how badly it missed. It's just like you sit there and go, and again, constructive criticism is that he's doing some incredible things as far as his forward craft. And again, we'll talk about the midfield last, and if forward 50 entries were an issue. So his limited opportunities maybe puts a little bit more pressure on him, but there's a little bit of just the fact that he is like, that was a terrible miss. And it kind of just speaks to maybe like a little bit of the frustration that's falling over that forward line with the forward 50 entries in the past few weeks as well.
Well, and hopefully for his case and the forward group, the bye has come at a good time just to let go of what has passed and kind of look forward to the second half of the season, where they can try and put more of a stamp on the game, him in particular in converting his shots. I mean, it was one of those games where a Mitch Georgiades had to come up the field a bit more to find the footy. And I mean, he took 3 contested marks to be second best for us in that statistic, which I thought was interesting. 3 shots on goal, 1 goal, 1 with a out in the full, like you said. So not inspiring, but overall, like how much can the forwards do with such poor supply? And to that end, I think Jack Whitlock's game is definitely deserving of praise to get 4 shots on goal with the average supply that we had for such a young player, who I think Isn't it funny how the goalposts changed from player to player? I think we can all say is definitely not a bust and is showing promise. And I definitely hope he keeps eating 6 meals a day for the next couple of years, because he's going to be a man mountain once that final form is reached. But yeah, considering the supply, like I mentioned, 2 goals, 2, he'd be disappointed. I think he had that shot from 50. So again, a low percentage shot, which I don't think missed by much from memory. Testing
floated across to the opposite point post that he's like shooting from.
Yes.
So if we'd hooked it in a little bit more, maybe it just crosses the line. And so to your point, it's actually a gettable shot. Just work on the
absolutely.
Yeah.
But there was and that was another point of frustration when we were up against it, and I think he won a free kick on 50, and he looked to pass it off, and then which he did, and then it eventuated in nothing. I'm not even sure it registered as I don't even think we got a behind out of that. I think it got turned over, and then it got rebounded right up the other end. And I know, I was kind of like, take the kick, like you can do it. And I think you offered the balance to say that young player wants to do the team thing. And he didn't win the ball from a marking situation where he was probably he would be more inclined to go, all right, I'm going to take the shot. It was I've got a free kick now. How can it benefit the team? Which is, noteworthy for a young player. But I think if you got it in your kit bag, and you're up against it, which I think we were by that stage of the game. That's part of the growth is just go, no, I can kick this, and we need a goal against the run of play. So I'm going to go for it. But apart from that, I was really impressed with his night overall. A couple more notes. Corey Durden, I find it interesting. Again, forwards having to come up the field to get their hand on the pill. Corey Durden has had 1 goal, no goal assist this week, which is rare. He's generally at least got one each, at least. Like I said, but 7
goal involvement guy. Yeah.
He is, which I certainly love. I love goal involvements.
1 goal, 1 assist.
Yeah. But I found it interesting. 1 goal, 0 behind, 0 goal assist, but 7 score involvements, which suggests that he's having to come up the field and enter chains of possession, just to help assist some ball movement and some score opportunity. And I guess I'll probably want to finish on Todd Marshall. I like the move forward, but I don't think it was a game where he can come out of it looking like a winner. He was at a hiding to nothing with what was going on in the game, and quite rightly should have 2 goals to his name. If he hadn't have, like you said, been unselfish and give Mitch his goal, which, had that not happened, maybe Mitch's streak ends.
Yeah, sliding doors all staying the same direction, so to speak.
That's right.
The butterfly
Ashton Kutcher.
Shout out to early 2000s fucking new metal movies. But with all those things staying the same, if Todd Marshall doesn't give off that assist, and Mitch Georgiades, run does end. And I think I said to you on the night, I was like, that's a fairly good opportunity for Todd to get on the board, considering at that point he still hadn't kicked a goal for 2026. He obviously does kick a very good one later on in the game, at a reasonably important time. And he doesn't get his hand on the ball a lot, but there's a lot of conjecture around the fact that he has a low disposal count. But like you said, hiding to nothing for the game. I don't give too much shit to Todd Marshall. I actually think I think they talked about it on Walshy and Bix on SEN SA today, maybe today, about Todd being in no man's land, but being the fact that they've tried him down back and now they're trying him down forward again. There's a hiding to nothing aspect of that, and being moved around position-wise as well. So I think he actually had, considering the game it was, the fact that we didn't have very good ball control, possession, I think ball possession numbers were we only had possession of the ball 37% of the game. So for Todd Marshall to try to combat that as a forward who's just been thrown back up forward for the first time properly in actually 2 years basically since he last played forward, considering his Achilles injury and everything like that. I think he actually had, I wouldn't, okay game may not be the right term, but like just I'm not blaming him. Like there's a lot of things going on before he
yeah, I don't think he had a.
You're right.
Yeah, I'm not even sure he had an okay game in totality. I thought he dealt with what he was served.
Limited
on the night.
opportunity. He has a very, very good high percentage goal assist and has a goal. Like limited opportunity, great goal assist, great goal. Like
I want to see how it looks like when our supply is a lot better than it fucking was on Saturday night. Because this was part of our preseason discussion. In the move of him to the defensive end is robbing Peter to pay Paul, and I'm not unhappy with him getting that chance to settle in the forward line for a period of time. Obviously, Jack Lukosius is around the corner, so it'll be interesting to see how they integrate him back into the side. Perhaps they weren't sure how much progression would come out of Whitlock as well, although they made the decision to move Marshall. So, but they had high hopes for Ollie Lord too. So a lot of names being thrown up in that little sequence there by me. But fact of the matter is, I don't mind it. I just want to see what happens with better supply, both for him and for Georgiadis.
Yeah. No, the buy is going to provide a lot of opportunity for them to figure those things out. Was there one more thing? The first thing I thought about with the forward line this week as I was like starting my review stuff was like the first week I really just missed the best of Willie Rioli from the last couple of years. Would have loved him just thrown down in the mix down there as well.
Just creating something out of nothing.
Yeah, a little bit.
Is that
a little
what
bit of
you're
magic. Yeah, there was just a lack of dynamism around there, and it's just like, and again, who knows what he could have actually, if you throw him in there and all sliding doors remaining the same as I just said, what actual difference he makes. But you and I saw when we saw the best of Willie Rioli, he there was some magic down there, and it was just one of those games that was just begging for that kind of impact in there, like when the tables are kind of turned against you, but you're still getting the entries a little bit, like you're still getting time in forward half and all those things. Like there's just like you're not getting the entries. You just wanted someone that like they could get a little bit of a chaos agent, and again a game that we probably had a fair balance of youth in there as well, so a lot of inexperience. Whereas Willie just could have the experience and guile he had. I think Durden's
probably feeds into a narrative of our whole side is that just a tinge of vanilla to it. There's when it comes to scare factor, it's in limited supply. Those game breakers just few and far between when it comes to our football side at the moment. Again, whether it be because young players haven't reached that point in their career yet, or we've just got a bunch of role players who, on a night like that, if that's all they can do, and then they're off by 5 to 10%, it really creates a vibe of I don't know the word to vanilla.
Yeah. I think there's a few players in our side that threaten that like energy, but Horn Francis going down forward to kick 3 goals, but like a couple of those come from outside.
He's a given though, in my opinion. And he's one of few.
Yeah, and Durden threatens that, but he's still young-ish in the AFL system as well. Like we're talking about Willie Rioli of the past few years was a 28 to 31-year-old player, veteran of the league that had already won a premiership at this point. So that's
and commanded a bit of attention when the ball was in the vicinity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we're kind of just missing that kind of player down there as well at the moment, I think. And obviously Darcy Ben Jones has been moved around a bit, and it's been taken away from that somewhat as well. So there's just like there's a lot of youth and mixture down there. So it's just like it is providing some inconsistencies in the forward structure as well, which I think is not helping, but also is providing opportunity. It's just like in this kind of game, you just look at it and go, there was a negative there. But overall going forward, you're going to see, the benefits of that to your Joe Berries and co in future years. It's just in this game, we unfortunately saw the detriment of the inexperience in that line, in that area, just being able to retain the ball there and all those things. It kind of helps transition to the midfield before we get to segments. It was obviously a great night for Jason Horne-Francis. He has his, I think, second best disposal game of his career. Obviously, the Peter Bako medal against Geelong a few weeks ago was 34 disposals, his best game of his career. I think shout out to Simon, who's sent through his extensive thoughts again. Did let us know a few weeks ago that I think his second best game was 31 disposals against Essendon a few years ago and Gather Round, I believe. So 32 disposals. He has one of his better games of his career, and unfortunately doesn't have a whole lot of help. I think there's some decent performances underlying in this midfield. We just don't have what the mix gets right. Like Horne-Francis is great. We obviously don't have a great Zach Butters performance. Yeah, we have a decent Zach Butters performance, but based on where the baseline of Zach Butters is, we have a below Zach Butters performance, I think, in a game against an opposition like Carlton. And then you have guys that assist ably in Drew and Richards and co, but we don't have enough that go with Jason Horne-Francis. Basically plays a lone hand, I think, in this game, and that's what, when you compare it to the Carlton midfield of Patrick Cripps playing incredible. Like watching Patrick Cripps just drive the ball forward just at all costs. He had burst and speed in his 195 centimeters. This is a fucking unicorn. It was so annoying to watch him play that way. Like after the weeks and weeks of Carlton malaise and he turns it on. Annoying.
And him being constantly written off, both inside the Carlton supporter base and outside of it.
Yeah, the trade rumors about where he could go at the end of the year already. But he's an incredible player. Like begrudging, I say, as a Port fan doing this review, but I begrudgingly say it was a pleasure to watch what he did. Like just objectively watch how he attacked the ball and moved the ball forward at all costs, whether it be just a few times, there's 2 or 3 times the ball was on the ground and he just drove forward to it and just fucking booted it off the ground, or he was able to gather and use his strength and move the ball on as well. It was just, but then he was ably assisted by the likes of Sam Walsh. And then you have Jagger Smith come in for one of his better performances of his young career as well. Obviously coming off the back of an ACL that Jagger Smith had last year and didn't even fucking play his youth year. He's still a rising star ability this year because he didn't get to play his draft year. They have the rising tide lifts all ships thing just happened for Carlton better than it did for us. Even though I think some of the criticisms against a few Port players are a little bit unfounded particularly I understand Willem Drew criticisms at times, but sometimes like in this game, I think there's some people, I think the one outlier, and I'll throw to you in a second, I've been rambling a little bit. Ollie Wines obviously has a very, very down game by his standards. Maybe he's one of the ones that's hit harder by his veteran age and Darwin-isms. Not the usual Darwinism of cultural zeitgeist, but Darwin impact that Ollie Wines had on his body. That could be a Darwinism. The city is named after him. But it's Ollie Wines aside, I think there's some. I really enjoyed the squirts of Joe Richards in there. It's just like the mix probably we didn't get quite right, and obviously, maybe a little bit of lethargy in the legs. I find it a curious midfield performance because I think there's some nice signs in there, but ultimately, and some of the stats are actually pretty good, but it's that stuff around the contest, not the immediate contest, that really let us down.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, and I'm just looking now at, Carlton had 5 of the top 7 ball getters on the night. 5 of the top 8, if you want to throw Joe Richards in there, and then a Carlton player again below that. So yeah, when it comes to major ball winners, Carlton had the lion's share of major ball winners on the night across both sides. And I understand where you're coming from. It's precarious when you look at, Drew, like you mentioned, 11 contested possessions and 11 tackles. Joe Richards with 7 ground ball gets. He had the 23 touches and he's gone at an okay clip. But I've really struggled to really determine how I feel about the midfield over the last few weeks, because it's like, yes, there's some numbers that look okay, but we're seeing the difference in reality. Yeah.
Is it size and power is the thing that I came out of the night, and certainly in replay I felt
they just looked flat. Like you said, they were getting their hands on the ball, but there was no hurt. And they clearly, when you look at Carlton statistics, clearly our players could have got the ball more often, or done more with it. It's just really odd. Like JHF clearly best on ground. I mean, I wasn't on an island, I don't think, saying that live at the ground without delving into statistics or anything. Like, it was just obvious. Unfortunately, though, could have used the ball a bit better. And imagine, some of the chains of possession that kind of squandered into nothingness, some of them came off his boot by sheer fact that he was the major ball getter for us on the field. So that's a little bit disappointing. You would have liked him to go at a better clip. And my perceptions of JHF is that he does use the ball very well most of the time, but there's been a few occasions this year where he's had the ball and looked in like he'd worked himself into some good space and then kind of squandered it, which it's unfortunate. I'm not writing him off and saying that he's a bust, but just one of those nights where he had clear impact, regardless of what his disposal efficiency looks like, and just would have liked a few of more of those possessions in damaging spots to go on and create a scoring opportunity, or more scoring opportunities. So it's just really odd. It looked flat. It looked like, apart from the key two, and again, you mentioned Jared Walsh and Mark Bickley on SENSA. They had a discussion about this as well, and Bix was saying that, every team, because the criticism was like, if Butters and JHF don't perform, like, who else have they got? And Bix was kind of like, well, every team has 2 gun midfielders, and if they don't perform, then the team kind of drops off from there, and which is true. Yeah. But I just think, it's the hurt and the assistance from the other guys, I guess you could say, that has been a criticism of our list this year.
I will say, it was a thought. Sorry, I might have cut into your thoughts there for a second, but I was thinking about it as we're going into it. I was already starting to think about, when we get to it next week and doing mid-year reviews and the players that are missing. Connor Rosie is a player that you squirt into, whether it be a couple of years before or last year, you're either squirting into midfield or he's absolutely playing midfield. Miles Bergman, going into this year, we thought he was going to spend a fair bit of time in midfield. Sam Powell-Pepper is a guy that you can fucking squirt into midfield. So there's some key bodies and strong bodies that we can't get in there at the moment based on injury, and they're obviously best 23 guys when they're at their best. And so you get a little bit one-dimensional, and then but we've still had some good performances from these guys that we've been playing the last few weeks, and obviously Ollie Wines being a Brownlow medalist and all those things. But when you're a rebuilding side and you've got some lethargy in the legs, then you're going to have games like this. And just looking at it as well, obviously Cripps at 32 disposals on the night, equal first with Jason Francis. He went at 50% disposal efficiency. So disposal efficiency sometimes looks a number that, you look at that and go, geez, he had an average game, but the impact he had on the game, just his drive and willingness to get the ball forward. I think some of those ones that I'm talking about where he just fucking booted the ball forward, I don't know if it ended up. I'd have to actually go back and look at the game and then find the particular disposal and work out if it worked out as an efficient disposal. I don't know if it would have made it even counted as a disposal. I'm not sure because he just hacks it off the ground. But what he's done is gain meters and just absolutely just impact the game on that front. Jason Francis has the 32 as well. He goes at 56.3%. Then you look at the next, I think, 6 players on the list, and you got Sam Walsh, Zach Butters, Jagger Smith, Oliver Florent, and George Hewitt. Zach Butters goes at 67.9% disposal efficiency with his 28 disposals, whereas Sam Walsh goes at 85% with his 28. Jagger Smith goes at 85% with his 27. Ollie Florent and George Hewitt both go at 84 and 80% respectively. So you've got just a lot of their major ball winners going at high disposal efficiency. Actually, outside of Patrick Cripps, they're basically going at 83, 84% in the next 4 big ball winners, and they had more ball winners. So that's where that disposal efficiency number we were talking about at the start of the podcast comes from. And they just were better ball users around the ball. And that's the thing, is like we're winning clearance, we're evening up at center clearance, we're winning stoppage, but the disposal efficiency outside of that was poor. And that's where the loss comes from. Like even if we're winning the clearance, and then the next possession, if it's going forward from one of these guys, then that's not counted in the stat sheet as clearances, but that's where the game was won. And obviously a lot of their connective tissue through the middle was very, very good as well.
Yeah, there was a couple of things there that you mentioned that have sparked thoughts of mine, and yeah, disposal efficiency. I think overall ours ended up at around 71 or 72%, but I think that was a lot of padding from kicking and catching in the back half that propped that number up. And like, excuse me, like you said, when it came to midfielders and players who can cause the damage, that's when those were the ones keeping dragging it down again. Like the being stuck in your back 50 can also make your disposal efficiency look a bit better than overall what it is, because you're just kicking backwards and forwards. You mentioned players who are out that could either be added to the mix full time or have squirts in the midfield, and it's a thought that I had since the game in regards to the criticism of our midfield not having the depth or just looking one-dimensional and whatnot. And that's what, it's like, oh, well, who can we get to put in there or whatnot? And it was like, well, we can get our players back from injury is my thought process. And the same thing is Connor Rosie. And while Miles Bergman was settled down back, a lot of us thought that he was going to continue on from what we saw, particularly in the latter stages of last season, of going into the midfield as well. Also has defensive accountability and can drive the ball forward, which would definitely add to our mix. And I like that you added Sam Powell-Pepper for a squirt, whether it be a forward stoppage or I think in that game that he did his ACL in Brisbane, I think he spent a bit more time around CBA or in the midfield, and he was playing a sensational game until he did his ACL, in my opinion. I think we both wanted to give him votes almost.
I think I might have. I think I might have. Last year's episode, but
so
I think I might have just added defiance for the fucking effort he put in for a while there.
Absolutely, yeah. No huge arguments on my behalf in that regard, but I guess this feeds into again the narrative over our list, and list cloggers and depth is a question.
I definitely feel that on this night. Sorry, just in here for a second.
But how many times can you go to the well with your depth?
Yeah, I think like you saw the probably limitations, and again, this is constructive criticism in the likes of your Jack Watkins and those guys on the list. I love their effort, but just like some of the double grab stuff from him, Jacob Ware again, his spot comes up for question, just out of the fact that their ability to just take the ball in one grab and those kind of moments. And Jack Watkins had a couple of questionable disposals. Their effort, I can't deny. Their effort's good, and their ability to get to the ball and get to the situation is good. It's just their ability to deal with it once they're there, and that's where depth comes into the question. But then that's why we're bringing up the guys that are missing, because we are actually missing some very, very talented ball accumulators, gatherers, and disposers of the ball, and these guys are actually coming in and playing okay. It's just this game, for whatever reason, just highlighted some of the deficiencies there for me as well.
Yeah, a couple of occasions where Jack Watkins had the ball, had the space when he got the ball, just needed to pull the trigger, but thought about it for a second too long, it felt, and that's the gap.
Second, that's all it takes.
Yeah, it is, and that's the gap of these. But yeah, part of my point at the end was like these types of players have been playing consistently because they're not being usurped by some of the more talented players that we have on our injury list. And role players are a part of any successful team, but depth can, like, you're hoping in a football season, and all AFL clubs suffer it, but you're hoping they come in, have a squirt, and they can actually apply themselves with a bit more vigor. Whereas I think the more you go to the well with your depth, the diminishing returns you will get.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's necessarily isolated to the Port Adelaide Football Club. I think you'll find that a lot of football clubs, if they're tapping into their depth frequently throughout a football season, the depth players are the depth players for a reason, and you'll get diminishing returns the more you have to use them in a football season, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. I think it was a completely different point that Ken Hingley was trying to make on the night. It was actually regarding goal kicking after Mitch Georgiades had completely shanked his shot at goal that went out in the full. And, I think a few of the, whether it was Rue or someone else, was trying to talk about, what's going on there, and, goal kicking and what's going on with the coaching down there. And Ken was pretty fucking defiant, and whether it was half protecting his legacy from last year, who knows? But he just kind of basically made the point, like, it's not that isolated to Port Adelaide, to be honest. Players have confidence, and things happen, and it can switcheroo pretty quickly as well. So to your point about depth, it's just like, yeah, if clubs are having to go to that well, it's not isolated to any one club. It's just the fact that you can throw your 25th to 35th best player in the list into a game here and there, and they might look like the next, Alex Rance or Mitch Georgiades or whoever, whatever player on either side of the field you want to look. But then in one game they can look like that. In 10 games they might look more like, John Butcher. Actually, that's an unfair comparison. John Butcher was the future, and it still is. Bring him
hampered by injury as well, if we want to talk objectively, and draft picks being busts and whatnot on that topic.
I've got a John
injury happens.
Butcher autograph card here somewhere.
John Butcher, one of the best people that you could meet by all accounts. A couple of degrees of separation with John Butcher personally, and everyone that I know that knows him can't speak any more highly of him. Just as a bit of a John Butcher kind of droplet there for everyone.
I don't know why. It was the first player that came to mind when I was trying to think of an example. I was just like, that's really unfair. But the point being that there's a lot of good players out there that just can't hold, and for whatever reason, hold to the consistent standard. That's what separates your Zach Butters from your Jack Watkins or whatever comparison you want to make, is like the best players can play, good players, good football players, not even AFL players, can play a good game here and there. The players that make AFL for 300 games or whatever are the players that can play AFL level football for 300 games. That's why there's a separation between talent and actual, the mindset, whatever that goes into it. And that's what we're seeing, I think, a little bit at the moment. To close off on that point, I think what you were kind of saying as well is that we're just seeing that drag effect of a lot of guys that are putting up the best efforts, but are just struggling to keep the consistency needed for the AFL level.
Yeah, absolutely. And as an extension of that, and to also close off, before the weekend, I would have said that Brisbane were the only side to have fantastic depth. And then they go and have a record breaking on the negative end for them, third quarter.
And questions being asked,
but again,
the drop in level of their midfielders.
And again, it's not just isolated. It's not just isolated to the Port Adelaide Football Club, even though us as a fandom and football fans become quite insular and have tunnel vision. There's many examples across a weekend, across a portion of the year that shows that our issues aren't isolated to just us. And maybe that feeds into the there's not enough talent in the country type discussion, but I think it's more the AFL's in a bit of an injury crisis, to be honest. I think there's enough good players, but there's too many depth players playing more games than what is ideal, or together, too many games together.
It's all about the mix, baby. It's all about
it is, as we say.
Yeah. Billy Frampton won a premiership with Collingwood. Like, it's all about the mix. You get the right mix, Billy Frampton can win a premiership. That's a side swipe I absolutely will hold to, by the way. Let's anything else you want to bring up, feel free to, but we should get to our segments and get to trying to finish this episode off in 2 hours, because we are reviewing this game and it doesn't deserve much more than that.
And there's probably only rusted ons anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, this is going to be down on the downloads. But for those that are listening and or watching on YouTube, thank you as always. Tell your friends about the podcast. Tell anyone that is a Port fan that doesn't know about us, and you think is a decent, wants to intake some content, give them a shout out for us. We are still a very, very kind of groundswell kind of podcast. We don't do any advertising or anything like that. So we do purely work on word of mouth, which has been building, and it's wonderful. But tell them to get around us on Spotify, Apple Pods, YouTube, whatever it may be. Subscribe, like, rate and review the podcast. And of course, get around us on the socials, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all of those areas where we post the content. And give us a love and keep interacting. We do love all the interactions. And particularly out of these weekends, even if they're the bad fans that we have to, give the little block button to on Facebook, we love all the interactions, but by and large,
or abusive opposition fans.
Actually, the block button basically is coming for the opposition fans that invade the Facebook page. So, which Jamie the executioner on the weekend. So we appreciate the love there. But by and large, all of you are wonderful, and we do love the interaction. So thank you and keep it up. Jamie, I think it's about time we get to the segments and get to the Wilson Gray.
Down, Gray doing brilliantly, getting through to Monfries. That's Grady's best.
Wilson kicks hard and kicks cruelly.
Robbie! Let him entertain you!
All righty, Wilson Gray Award. This, of course, an award for efforts on the field outside of goal scoring opportunities that just give us the word I'm thinking of this week is just the nipple tingles. Like that's a good way to describe it. Yeah. And what won the nipple
Thanks
tingle?
For the visual.
Oh, yeah. Do you want me to touch him? I'll do it. No. What won last week was Butters. It was a very, very close vote last week, by the way. And shout out to everyone. Of course, vote on Instagram on Wednesday evening as you're listening to this on Wednesday. They'll be up for 24 hours, the video packages on the Instagram stories on our Instagram page. What won last week in a very, very close vote was Butters swooping on Graham for holding the ball call in the middle of the ground. That was your vote. That was your nomination last week. Beating my nomination of Berry's assist on a dime to Richards with 47% of the vote. So a very, very close vote. I like it, even if I lose. I like it when the vote's close because that just shows that we picked a good mix there and people were fucking vibing with both.
Can you feel the tension?
You get to go first this week. Touch my nipples. You get to go first this week, Jamie. In my blooms. Give us your nomination for this week.
I'm going to cut to the chase and just highlight Corey Durden's tackle in the third quarter, which created a whole lot of hoopla. That's for sure. Probably unwarranted on our end, considering we were getting pantsed. But funny altogether. But a good effort from him to keep his streak alive, which obviously that part of it isn't part of the Wilson Gray. Goals are obviously excluded. But yeah, just a bit of who do you think you are? Trying to fend me off. I'm going to fucking cause you to give away holding the ball. And he did, which was entertaining for moi.
Take their opportunity.
Carlton have dominated, really. It's been incredible. Not further in front.
Danger for Wilson. Durden was not buying any of that step. Lays a big tackle in the wrestles.
Great tackle by Durden. He just grabbed hold of his jumper, got him cold.
I reckon the second part of that.
Entertaining for me as well, and I think we enjoyed it on the hill that night, on the night as well. Yeah, it's kind of out of the box as well. All the fracas that happened afterwards, it just felt very out of order for the energy of the night. That was pretty fucking flat, to be honest. So it just came out of nowhere. I was like, okay, is this where the run begins? Of course, for a moment we thought it may be, but unfortunately it was not. But a very, very good nomination from you, and a very good Corey Durden moment, which is why we love what Corey Durden is doing in our forward line, both with his pressure and as well the fact that he was able to finish it above the fracas. My nomination, I feel like it's a pretty low key one, but I want to reward a player for what we've touched on it before. But Josh Lai had a few intercept marks in this game. And I want to reward one of them. Just in the first quarter, I think about 5 minutes in, he takes an intercept mark where he kind of has to double grab it a little bit just to keep the ball in front of him. But a Josh Lai intercept mark about 5.5 minutes into the first quarter is my nomination.
Hewitt out of the middle, away to Walsh. Some of the names combining in there. And Lai taking a nice intercept back into the side this week.
I think Josh Lai is doing some very, very good things in that area. And this one, I think I actually looked at you guys on the hill and just said, "There's an early WG right there." I was just really, really excited about the fact that he was able to just strongly take the position and take the intercept mark. So, yeah, giving Josh Lai a little nomination for his moment, and very, very excited for just kind of those little moments he's showing and growing in his game.
For sure. Just a quick shout out. I think there was a moment, I can't remember which quarter it was. I want to say second quarter. I think Tom Anastasopoulos went back with the flight, put a spoil in. Can't remember who it was against, but yeah, that's in the vagaries of my mind.
Mm-hmm. I also had McKinley when he kind of foxed Francis Evans on the wing or on the half-forward flank and actually like smothered the ball, and it's what ended up in the shot that he hit the fucking behind post and burnt a couple of players that he could have handballed off to, but also you can understand the confidence he had. But not so much a shot, but the foxing of Francis Evans was fun. So I had that in my shortlist as well. But yeah, a couple of nice moments there, and I'm looking forward to seeing.
Sounds a bit like a Wes Anderson movie. The foxing of Francis Evans.
Yeah, just that straight on camera shot, just Francis Evans standing there and Ewan McKinley just sidling in.
With the weird mo and sunnies, the glasses.
A brightly lit background and, Rushmore is one of my all-time favorite films. So I, love a Wes Anderson side note there. All right, let's get into, let's get a goal of the week.
Monfries has kicked a goal. Unbelievable. Haven't seen anything like that. It's gone at right angle.
Flashpoint, Stevie Mobler, what a time! He is floating on air now!
Goal of the week will be interesting this week because I just don't think there's many good ones out of this one, to be honest. But last week's winners, of course, running on the same nomination schedule. It was a very, very one-sided result last week. Of course, Ewan McKinlay running down the wing, my Holbrook NSW king. He won with 89% of the vote after his double bounce effort against Gold Coast up in Darwin last week. 11% voted for Farrell's cruising goal from 50, which is, again, goes to show, I've said this before and I'll say it again, there's been a lot of opportunities over the last few years where I've thought this is obviously 100% vote and then still someone goes with the other one. And I appreciate those people that vote for the other one.
Yeah.
I think it's good. But,
Thank you, 11%.
Yeah, this is one of the stronger results on the votes. I get to go first this week. I'm going to go with, I'm actually going to nominate Todd Marshall's set shot at the start of the fourth quarter.
A nice mark and takes off, trying to get some run going. Has that been the talk? To get the ball flowing, they get it to Marshall on 50 to start the year. Goal kicker in a previous era to give his team a real lift to start the final term.
Let his teammates come.
First goal for the year.
It'd be great for his confidence. It's been a long time for him to get to that point because he did do that ruptured Achilles, and it's been a real battle to get back. I'm really proud of him and pleased for him to have that moment.
His first goal in a long time.
For a player that's been moved around so much and has had to deal with what he's dealt with over the past 18 months, there was an incredible finish from the set shot. Obviously, right from 50 in a whether you call it a pressure moment is based on how winnable you thought the game was at that point. But it was a point in the game where we had kicked a couple of goals at the back end of the third quarter, and starting the fourth quarter well was important if we still thought we had a shot, which obviously the players were sent out there with that mission in mind. So yeah, a great set shot. Had to really put everything into it to get it from 50 meters and finishes off.
Yeah, great call. And just a tangent on that, I think it was a critical moment of the game. And I think it did, there was the sliding doors moment, sheer moments after that goal with JHF dropping what I've seen him mark plenty of times. And it would have been a great test of Carlton's mental fortitude had that kick gone through and brought the margin under 20 points. We'll obviously never know, and it didn't happen now. But yeah, for Todd to start the fourth quarter with such a goal, long range goal as well. Was it? And just I want to live in a different reality and see what happened, but of course I can't. Because would Carlton fold like a deck of cards, like we've seen them do this year? We'll never know. But important moment of the game, that's for sure. My nomination is for young Jack Whitlock, who found himself with multiple shots on goal, as we've discussed already. But I'm going to nominate his snap from the pocket. He's now got a couple of these in his pocket for this season, getting a mark in the, I guess you could say, right forward pocket, causing him to kick on his non-preferred, his left foot, to snap it inside goal. Just a beautiful goal. Obviously, been a bit dry on the goal front the last couple of weeks, so nice of him to get... He had kicked the behind by then, but nice for him to get on the board, which got him into the game, and got his goals flowing again, obviously finishing with the 2 by the end of the game.
The Blues defence, McKinlay can power away, and he'll chip it in. Whitlock.
Got a good set of wheels, McKinlay, and when he uses them, they come in handy. Found the left foot snap from a fair way out as well.
Margin 43 before the kick. Left foot snap is a beauty. And he breaks the little goal drought of Yata Bulti.
And that's a classy kick from a young fella. He looked like he knew what he was doing and put it straight through.
Yeah, very good nomination by you. And I think we touched on it before, but I think it's an interesting aspect to Jack Whitlock's game is like having that third forward, and maybe Todd Marshall was that for this game. Is like his best probably performances this year have been when there was a genuine third up there, like with Lukosius earlier in the year, and maybe the last few weeks it's been a little bit diminishing returns, and then Todd Marshall goes up there, and then there's opportunity found for the fact that our forward in a bad game, our forward tools technically still did kick 4 goals. So if we'd been better around the ball and been able to deliver better, then maybe that return becomes 6, 7, 8, whatever it may be, and then you're on your way to a fairly good return. Yes. Jamie. That's good. Let's get to the player of the year votes. I'm interested to see this week because obviously these kind of weeks present us a challenge with the game it was, but I'll play the sting and we'll see what Jamie has. Now it's time for the CREEDCAST Player of the Year voting. Alrighty, Player of the Year voting. Jamie, you get to go first. Like I said in the preface, it's an interesting week. We go 5 through 1, with 5 being our best on ground, 1 being our 5th best on ground. And obviously a game like this makes it an interesting test of our mettle in presenting our best on field. But Jamie, I'll be interested to see where you go.
Really interesting because I'm sure, like a lot of people, you're just like, I don't think there was 5 best on grounds. But obviously for the point of the exercise, and of course, there would be the top 5 players, there'd be the bottom 5 players. Bottom 5 players probably getting spoken about a lot more than the top 5, that's for sure, after such a game. Honorable mention, I will, sorry, I was going to say that then, but I'll wait until you've done your votes. My number 1 is actually for Can't Play 5, Logan Evans. I think he even copped criticism in the aftermath, but he finishes the game as our 4th highest champion data rated player on the field, and he's got the 21 disposals, 4 intercepts, but he's gone at 90. So maybe a bit of that's the kicking catch, but 559 meters gained would probably suggest not as much of the kicking sideways and backwards. 6 marks for him, and he finishes the game with the 2 score involvements, but 3 inside 50s, 8 rebound 50s, and 11 pressure acts. So not a bad day out for Logan. And I know personally, I think I've had him in my votes semi-frequently, particularly over the last 5 weeks. So young player, mid-season recruit, which we'll probably save that topic for another time, being the mid-season draft the night we're recording. But moving on to my second, I've put Joe Richards in. He did get the long-awaited shift in the midfield. But like you said, the numbers and the eye test and all of that, but he finished with the 23 disposals. He actually had 7 ground ball gets, 7 contested possessions, 73.9%, 292 meters gained, 5 marks. So it's just some things look good. 5 score involvements, 5 clearances. Thought there was a couple of occasions where he hat kicked it straight to an intercept too, which again, it just sticks in my mind. He was definitely not alone in that regard. But yeah, just like you can use the ball better, and you are a mature player. You should have a bit more presence of mind and hit someone up. Find a target. I can't even list the number of times I said find a target on the night because we weren't. 3 votes goes to Josh Lai. Oh, sorry.
I was just saying. Obviously, for the listener, Jamie and I, we sit in different spots in the ground, but we often end up catching up on game days and spend a bit of time together. And yeah, there's a lot find a fucking target or something like that from Jamie on the night. Just exasperated. Obviously a shared opinion, and one that I was
Yeah.
What's coming out of my mouth, I don't actually hear. I hear what Jamie's saying, like next to me, and then obviously our mate Steve next to us is being like, "This isn't the Port Adelaide I remember from the '70s."
Yeah, bring back Russell,
Anyway,
but
continue.
may he rest in peace, of course. So cat's out the bag. My 3 votes are Josh Lai, for all the reasons we spoke about before. In terms of it's that matrix of when we do our votes of expectation versus output, age, and just some key statistics in his role that put his head above the rest, which we discussed before in terms of intercept possessions, intercept marks, contested marks, disposal efficiency, etc., etc. And obviously, go see our socials posts where Dave has fantastically put together an image displaying all of those key statistics. If you haven't seen it already, 4 and 5. Zach Butters. It was a down Zach Butters game, but again, we can't. Oh, you may, but we've discussed about where players set their bar, and if they meet that or go below it, then sometimes it affects where we put them in our votes. But the fact of the matter is I think Zach Butters was still our second best on ground in totality. He did get moved to halfback, which, credit to the coaches for trying to do something, and their reasoning, I think, was fair in the fact that he can create with the ball, and it's what we weren't doing predominantly off of halfback. Don't really know if I want to see him spend too much time there over the course of a season, though, to be honest. But the game was kind of done, and it gave an opportunity for the likes of Jace Burgoyne and whatnot to feature in the midfield. So that's where I've got it, and I've got 5 votes for Jeff, who had many knockers coming into the game, and then JHF. And just hit the ground running. Mentioned his disposal efficiency. I do want to park that for 1 second because he hit the ground running and he was quite clearly from very early on our best player. And I'm just so happy for him because I thought the criticism was pretty unwarranted. He had a couple of down weeks. I think there were some mitigating factors in that. And I thought, again, it comes to the gap between his best and his worst, but I think his best has been elevated too. So when you're bridging that gap and you keep raising the bar, then so he's had, as you alluded to before, or quite specifically spoke about, not alluded to, but he's had 2 of his career best disposal tallies this season within the last, 5 weeks. So take that.
Learning
for what it is.
How to just be around the ball and win the ball and get the disposal numbers is a big part of. You've just got to understand how to position yourself to get those numbers. I don't think a lot of football fans understand just that aspect of the game, just getting yourself into the position, because disposal means you're getting the ball and then disposing of it. And to do that at a regular rate is a massive part of what, and he's starting to learn that, to your point. It's just like, he's done 2 of those top, plus 30 games in the last 5 weeks. And his 2 best games for that number have been in the past 5 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just understanding, like, if he's playing a game that has high midfield attendance or if he's positioned more forward and how that looks, and judging his return on those roles. But I mean, you got to go through the stats. For one, obviously 22.9 champion data rated player, featured in Sench's weekly wrap up, which was great. Sench Footy on social media, who keeps a keen eye on player ratings each week.
It's just a great account for a footy fan. If you're a footy nuffy, follow Sench Footy. I don't know where their loyalties lie. It's just it's a great account for a footy nuffy to follow.
I think he's a Sydney fan, actually. Old Senchy Sench. So he'd be laughing. The hills are alive with the sound of music for Sench Footy in that regard. But Yeah, to go back to JHF's statistics, 32 disposals, 23 kicks, 16 contested possessions, 5 intercepts, which, good going for a guy who's, a midfielder, a midfield forward, not a mid defense. 9 ground ball gets, 600 meters gained, 5 marks. He obviously had the 3 goals, and Jesus Christ, what would we do without him in that regard? On Saturday night, in his 6 score involvements, 8 clearances, 4 from the center, 8 inside 50s, 16 pressure acts too, which, upper
It's a well
bracket, I guess you could say. A couple of tackles, one percenter. So dine out, JHF, dine out.
He always will. And well, more often than not, will at this point. I'm growing in my confidence. Not that anyone's unconfident of what JHF was going to do, but he's a special player, and once he gets the opportunity, and figures it out, within a structure, it's going to be scary. So, very, very good by you. No, we'd obviously the regular listener will know we'd Yahtzee the last couple of weeks.
Double
with
Yahtzee.
The exact same vote. Obviously, we do not share our votes to each other before we go through this process, so we don't know what each other are going to vote. And for the past, I think, 18 months, we hadn't Yahtzeed, and then 2 weeks in a row, we'd Yahtzeed. No Yahtzee this week. I will start with the fact that I also had Evans at 1. So when you said you had Evans at 1, I went, oh, are we going to get another Yahtzee here? But then getting to my 2 spot, I actually threw Willem Drew in there. So that obviously shows that we have a different player in our votes in totality. It was a tough week this week for votes, obviously, with a few things going on. Willem Drew actually got a lot of hate out of the weekend. A few people calling for his delisting, which I think is just abject stupidity. But, people can do what they want to do. And like I said, opinions are like arseholes. Everyone's got one. But, a few spots at Willem Drew. Willem Drew had 11 tackles, which led the side. He went at 64.7% disposal efficiency. So not great, but he was tasked with some different roles at times. He was sometimes throwing to Patrick Cripps. He had the 5 1%ers, which I think led the side for Port Adelaide. Oh, sorry, outside of Alira, obviously. But clearance-wise, I thought was interesting because Willem Drew has been a feature in clearance. And again this week, he had 6 clearances, which was second only to Jason Horne-Francis. He had more clearances than Zach Butters or Joe Richards. So there's a few areas he was pretty good in this week. And, again, tasked with some kind of thankless roles in Willem Drew. And he still was doing a few things that I like when I watched the replay. Just had a few moments I liked. He had the 6 score involvements as well. Had a couple of those clearances were actually decent clearances. So I enjoyed what I saw from Willem Drew. Again, I'd like to see more. I want to see the classic Willem Drew, but I think some of the criticism of Willem Drew out of the weekend was unfounded as well. I threw Zach Butters into my 3 spot. I was maybe a touch more harsh on the fact that he didn't have the impact on the game I wanted. I thought both goal scoring opportunities, maybe the shot from 50 was not squandered, but I think he squandered the one that he actually had the shot on that registered the score. He squandered, and I think he could have maybe taken the shot from one that he passed off later in the game as well, alongside just the fact that he didn't quite have the impact that he maybe would have liked to on the game. So I gave him the 3 votes. So going into my 4 and 5 spot, I've obviously not actually got Josh Lai in my votes at all. He's in my honorables. He was my one honorable mention, was Josh Lai. So shout out to Simon, who always messages through with his thoughts. And he actually said in his vote, in his rundown of thoughts from the game, and he had extensive thoughts, and we've probably touched on a few of them in the macro of the episode. But he did mention, he's like, I hope at least one of you gets him in the votes. And I just automatically had him in my 1 spot for a while. But then once I started looking at Evans and Drew, I wanted to get Drew in there somewhere, maybe partly because I'm mad at people wanting to delist him. Maybe it's just a little bit of personal vendetta stuff. I started the episode with some personal vendetta stuff, and maybe I'm finishing it with it. But my honorable mention was Josh Lai. So I'm really stoked that you got him in your votes, because I was wondering it was one of those things, the structure of how we do the votes. I wanted to lie in there somewhere, and I ultimately didn't get him there because it was basically between Evans and Lai. And I actually, once I looked at the Evans line more and more, I wanted to reward Evans, and I couldn't find Lai in there. So I'm glad you got him in there. But that means I've got Richards at 4. I think based on what he's been doing, what his role has been, and then throwing him in there the way we did this week, I think he produced some pretty good results out of not much expectation. So I don't know. I just threw Richards in there. Maybe it's because we talked to him last week and he knows he's aware of Big Dog on Twitter. I don't know. There could be some other things. But I actually really enjoyed what Richards was doing.
He's a good chat.
He had some really good disposal. Yeah. Joe Richards, good bloke. But I think he had some nice moments in there where his numbers were quite reasonable. He had the 5 clearances. He had a couple of center, 3 in the stoppage as well. The 5 score involvements. He had obviously went at reasonable disposal efficiency, just above what we had in the game as a team. So I had to get Joe. Joe Richards was number 4 for me, and obviously Joe 5. So that's my votes.
Nice.
Yeah, not quite a Yahtzee. And we actually had some different players in there for the first time in a few weeks as well. So,
I like it.
Goes to show the game it was, but also that we're, I like that. I like the guys at Lai are getting a reward, and I like that Drew's getting some love, despite some people on Twitter
from myself.
Yeah. Steven Gerrard, after scoring out against West Ham in the FA Cup final in 2006, just patting the back. But I'm annoyed when people say Willem Drew should be delisted after a game like that. So that was a little bit of maybe pushback. This has been an episode, as we close off, that I am pushing back on fucking annoyance. I am annoyed a little bit, so that's where I'm at.
And no better time to wrap it all up and put a bow on it, I would say.
Yeah. There's no game to preview this week. The weather's looking fine to sit back this weekend and sink a carton of piss and enjoy the fact that you don't have to worry about the fact that Port Adelaide might win or lose this weekend. There's no game to worry about this weekend. So enjoy your weekend, Port fam. We will probably, obviously, no preview show this week, so we're going to take the opportunity to have a mini break into the weekend, but we will be back early next week with a kind of review overall of the first half of the season and what we've seen and what we've loved, what we haven't, and look back at what's been in a more kind of just general sense. And of course, then as the week heads on, we'll be getting back into the regular run of the show with preview shows going into the second half of the season and whatnot. So yeah, thank you for everyone, of course, joining us for this episode and every episode previous. We do appreciate your support as always. And it's been an interesting first half of the season, but we're looking forward to getting into the review of it. And then, of course, getting into the second half of the season and moving on from there. There is a lot of exciting things to be excited about, just using excited twice. But despite the results of late, pretty positive about some direction that's going forward.
I agree. Thanks everyone for joining us. Whoever you may be in the face of a demoralizing loss and a 2-hour podcast, but we appreciate every single one of you as always. Hope you have a good week. Do something nice with the break, and we'll see you back next week.
Can the pair.
Can the pair.